Good evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to Trinity University and to what I am sure will be a very stimulating evening. We are extremely fortunate to have with us tonight one of the great intellects and one of the most admired educators of our time. Jacques Barzun came with his father to the United States in 1920, entered Columbia University in 1923, and graduated at the head of his class, joined the faculty immediately thereafter, and remained until he retired in 1975, after having served as Dean of Faculty and Provost, but more importantly, after having established a reputation of one of the most admired and respected members of the academic community in the United States. He concluded his administrative duties in 1967 and was named Special Advisor on the Arts to Columbia's president and given the designation of University Professor, which is the highest honor accorded to anyone at Columbia. At his retirement celebration, President George Rupp called him one of the truly great men of our time. And historian Kenneth Jackson marveled at the breadth of his interest. And here, with pause, wondering if Texas, where he planned to move, was big enough for him. Another colleague eloquently called Dr. Barzun the best man I've known. You teach by example, by relentless expectation and unobtrusive kindness. You always fought for that endangered species, the language, correct, precise English. That endangered species lives on in the 30 or so books that Mr. Barzun has written or edited, books that include musical intellectual history, commentary on contemporary arts and sciences, handbooks for scholars and writers, a reader's guide to detective stories, one of my favorites, a book entitled A Teacher in America, another entitled The Use and Abuse of the Modern Researcher, and his magnum opus, From Dawn to Decadence, 500 Years of Western Culture, 1500 to the present, which was published last year and became an immediate bestseller. Publisher Charles Scribner, Jr., in his candid memoir, singles out Professor Barzun as the best editor he has ever seen, citing his ability to find the mot juste, or whatever was required to clarify and simplify. Scribner, he is a bewildering virtuoso. Working with him is like working with Goethe, or someone of that order, a chance that comes once in a lifetime. Our chances tonight, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to Trinity University, America's foremost public intellectual, Jacques Barzun.
Mr. President, fellow students, fellow teachers, fellow parents, my hope this evening is that from your three separate points of view, you may agree on the definitions that I shall give in answer to the question that brings us together, what is a school? For a start, I hope that everybody would agree that a school is a place where teaching and learning go on steadily and systematically. That is its function. Its purpose is something else. Its purpose is to remove ignorance. A school can do several other good things at the same time, but it has one purpose only: to remove ignorance. The point of these definitions is that they serve as a standard by which to judge what is done and what is proposed in the name of schooling. The use of this standard has been forgotten in the agitation for reform, the flood of schemes, programs, methods, and devices urged by critics and parents, by local and federal governments. Therefore, much needs our attention. To remove ignorance is more complicated than to remove tonsils, and it is sometimes as painful to the child. The teacher uses no anesthetic and should not be one. Hence, the first of our main concerns is, how does a teacher teach? Next, how does the learner do his part, followed by what should be taught? Then, how to test the knowledge acquired. Next, who should run the school, followed by what role for the parents. And last, what goes into teacher training. Nobody questions that a school must have teachers who can teach. Today, the complaint is that side by side with teachers who are willing and able, there are many who are willing but unable. Worse, there is a teacher shortage. 40,000 are needed in Texas alone. And everywhere, good ones leave for other work. To understand and appreciate the act of teaching, take an example in 2 steps. You are visiting a town for the first time and want to find a post office. You accost a pleasant-looking person and ask the way. He smiles and waves an arm and says, you go down to Maple and then you walk 3 blocks, maybe 4, I guess it's only 3, to Jackson. And then you turn left toward the square. The post office is across the way. You'll see the flag in front. All this has been rattled off at speed and you're confused. You thank him, but must ask again. You approach a middle-aged woman with a bright countenance, and here is what she says. The post office? Yes. You keep on as you are going toward Maple Avenue. You can see it from here. It's the wide street where all the traffic is. You cross to the far side and walk right 2.5 blocks to the narrow cross street, which is called Jackson. There's no street sign with its name on it, but facing you as you approach is the name Jackson on the big general store. You turn left on Jackson, and it soon takes you to a plaza, a round open space with a fountain in the middle. There's a diagonal path which you take all the way across, and straight ahead of you is a small office building. The post office is on the ground floor. Remember, down to and across Maple, 2.5 blocks to Jackson, the narrow street, left on it and across the plaza. What makes this a model of what teaching is? To teach means first to put oneself in the mental state of the learner, aware of his ignorance and his capacity for confusion. The helpful woman removed both by breaking up the route into things to be seen as they appear, one after the other. She took care to direct you to the far side of the avenue, pointed out that Jackson was narrow and had no sign. In the describing, she repeated names and facts even before her final summing up. That bespoke her talent. Now for her qualifications. She knew her subject in full detail, as the first informant did not. She spoke without backtracking, and unlike him, with pauses and not too fast. The poor man was probably aware of his incompetence because he wound up in a way that I did not mention. He said, "You can't miss it." That is a sure sign of poor directions. A teacher, then, is a person who, by squaring the mind with that of the class, removes ignorance on a subject fully mastered. This description tells us not only what teaching is like, but what teacher training calls for. The unhappy truth is that there are few born teachers, fewer perhaps than born poets, and schools must do with people who are neither, but who can be trained for their task. Now turn to the learner, the child in school. The difference between the pupil and the adult who wants directions is that the child has no question in his mind. To get him to learn, to remove the ignorance he is not aware of, the teacher must create some equivalent to a question. In other words, stir up interest and hold attention. Long before school years, the infant learns at a great rate because it wants to walk, talk, do all sorts of things with its muscular energy. Next, the child asks questions. What is that for? What does this mean? It is then that the parent's care matters enormously. In one of his stories, Ring Lardner has a boy ask his father a question, after which comes, "Shut up," he explained. Not all children are eager for school, but all can learn school subjects. No social class, ethnic background, or skin color creates exceptions. It is the school's duty to establish conditions that reinforce the teacher's effort to keep the child's mental engine in gear. For knowledge cannot be poured into a child like liquid into a bottle. An early start in a preschool program where learning is close to playing accustoms the child to going daily to work with others at tasks directed by a grown-up. But to learn is an invisible operation, so it cannot be shown by example. But obviously, a learner is one who makes a mental effort under guidance and correction. The point here is that the child in school has a responsibility to make a mental effort and follow instructions. Learning is done in three ways: listening to the teacher explain, drilling to memorize rudiments, and taking part in discussion. Memorizing has a bad name, but it is essential. The multiplication table cannot be mastered in any other way. Likewise, the verb forms of a foreign language and all the techniques, such as how to use logarithms. Drill also teaches another lesson, which is that in life, one must go through drudgery in order to attain something one wants to know or to do. Drill is done by coaching and recitation, and again on one's own in study hall and at home overnight. These last two are imperative. Study hall, which is scheduled for time when there are no classes at work, teaches how one works by oneself, as in homework. A supervising teacher acts like the parent to help and to assure quiet attention. As for homework, which is daily practice in relearning, it enables the teacher to see what each pupil has or has not understood. These benefits disappear when parents do more than help and encourage and actually write the paper or solve the problems. The third mode of learning, by group discussion, is appropriate in middle or high school when the teacher thinks the class mature enough to carry on a seminar-like exercise. The topic is an idea or situation that has been duly studied and offers room for opinion. When ably led, discussion teaches what nothing else can do so well: how to think straight. The teacher sees to it that each student speaks clearly, has listened accurately to the previous speaker, and meets the point just made, using facts and reasoning and keeping the temper cool. I have described so far, school, teacher, and learner, implies some definite contents. What is to be taught and learned? Any proposed subject must meet two demands. Does it remove a patch of harmful ignorance, and is it teachable? Before I say more, one fact stands out. Reading is central. Every act of learning, through school and later, depends on the ability to read. And the way to learn it is through the drill called phonics, recognizing and sounding the letters and combining the sounds to form words. It is sheer lunacy to try to teach the young to recognize the full word as a picture, the Dick and Jane method. That adult readers grasp the whole word in one glance is a result of much reading, not a shortcut for beginners. Adults also do arithmetic in their heads, but it would be idiotic to start the subject that way. And there is more to reading than making out words. The child must understand all that the words mean and imply when put together in sentences. Along with reading stands handwriting, which requires the full attention it has lost in late years. Many business people are so fussy that they want employees who can write legibly. All other subjects for schooling face the challenge, is it teachable? Today, school programs are loaded with subjects that are unteachable. For example, family living, shopping and community resources, good citizenship, self-esteem, thinking. They sound interesting and desirable, but they're a waste of time and effort. The typical unteachable subject is social studies, which has largely replaced history. Why unteachable? Because it is formless. A classroom subject is one in which each phase grows out of the one before and builds up from simple to complex until the student commands an organized body of knowledge. Grammar, arithmetic, plain geometry, algebra, history, geography, physics, chemistry, and biology, foreign languages, all these are teachable. They are unified by system or by cause and effect. As for reading, writing, composition, and literature, which are less systematized, they rely on techniques and are learned by practice. What is wrong with social studies and other formless subjects is that they're an indefinite mix of facts and ideas gathered from here and there from among advanced subjects that are teachable. Sociology, psychology, anthropology, economics, demography, law, public health, government, and whatnot else. The result of trying to teach a hodgepodge is that it leaves no organized information nor clear principles, and it favors sloppy work. It is indicative of the casual character of social studies that in one Western state, 85% of those who teach it are drawn from the teachers of physical education. What of the arts, for which there is a demand by some parents and educators? Well, is it appreciation, history, or performance that is wanted? And of which arts? Too often, where art has been offered, pupils are again given a hodgepodge, 2 weeks of looking at Chinese painting, 2 weeks at Japanese, followed by a look at Belgian lace, and then at African textiles. For more lasting and useful purpose is mastering the fundamentals, drawing with pencil or charcoal and studying color and composition. For music, how to read notes, followed by sight singing and the recognition of simple musical forms. Some children will go on their own to play at home or in the band, and both the graphic rudiments which equip for careers in architecture and the fine arts in commercial art and industrial design with the music program, which gives a grounding for domestic enjoyment and professional work. Together, prepare for what the public calls the real world. Apropos of the real world, some parents, and still more students, complain that history, literature, a foreign language, advanced math and science will not equip them for the world's work, for being, say, a firefighter or keeping a restaurant. Teachers must explain to parents and pupils that the effort of learning difficult subjects develops the talent of learning as such, and also the quick grasp of unfamiliar facts and ideas. Besides, the school has a duty not only to the individual but to society, namely the handing down of the treasury of knowledge. Without schools to perform this task, a civilized nation would turn into a mass of illiterate barbarians in 30 years. These subjects that are questioned open the way to college and the professions. None of them may appeal to a 14-year-old who 4 years later may be glad that it was required. Students are not customers to be suited, but wards to be cared for. Something more needs saying on this complaint, for it is a fact of nature that not everybody feels at home with words and ideas. Many are deft with their hands. They have a sense of space and size, an affinity with the makeup and workings of machinery. Or they enjoy the ways of trade and finance, of clerical and managerial tasks. These talents deserve not just shop work for a few hours a week, but a comprehensive technical and commercial curriculum. Drop that misleading word vocational. A curriculum taught by serious practitioners, and the options being open for the last 2 years of high school when adolescents become impatient. Again, geared to the real world is the much debated sex education. Its proper name is human sexuality, and it should loom large in a thorough course on hygiene. In that course belong also the elements of nutrition, sanitation, and personal and public health. These topics need no moralizing if the facts are made so vivid through description and pictures that they constitute strong warnings against natural consequences. One more type of instruction is to be expected of every teacher in every course: correcting mistakes in English, poor pronunciation, and jumbled thoughts in speech. To overlook these from laziness or fear of hurt feelings is the greatest disservice that can be done to the young. The correcting should be done gently but firmly, not incessant nagging, but timely. It will be found that to express oneself clearly satisfies an emotional need in the child and makes for self-esteem. And that ability has a cash value in the real world. This curriculum is by and large that of the American public school of the 1920s. It enabled the high school to graduate young people who deserved to be called educated. After teaching and learning comes examining. It is a touchy subject. Pupils are nervous, teachers tyrannized, parents bewildered, educators arrogant. Fairness demands that examinations fit what has been taught. It is no longer so. Today, if children should join in a class action suit against present-day testing, a righteous judge would award them damages. To begin with, they are cheated of proper teaching time when the class hour is devoted to special coaching designed to outwit a prefabricated test made up by remote merchandisers. Instead of check marks in a box, good essay questions show the teacher what has been learned and the student what he has forgotten. The multiple choice test does neither. What it does is positive harm because the so-called objective question does not call for knowledge. It calls for single fact recognition. Just return with me to that town where you were seeking a post office. Time has passed, and you wonder whether you could find your way. What was the name of that wide avenue? Chestnut? No. You keep walking, and there it is. Maple, of course. And soon comes the big shop, Jackson's, sure enough. Those names seem familiar. You have recognized them, but you could not summon them up. You did not know them. Knowing means the power to recall, and without any hints. Now, let us face together a multiple choice question that taps our ignorance. The statement reads, the first man who drew down lightning from the clouds and showed it to be electricity was Patrick Henry, Thomas A. Edison, Benjamin Franklin, Button Gwinnett. We really don't know, but we reject Patrick Henry because we do remember that all he ever did was to say, give me liberty or give me death. Edison sounds plausible. Electrical power today often comes from an Edison company. But no, Edison is the light bulb man, and that's not way back when electricity was first fiddled with. Edison is out. As for Button Gwinnett, who has ever heard of him? He doesn't sound real. Nobody was ever named Button. So it's Franklin, the right answer, by default, not knowledge. The student who has wormed his way to Franklin in this fashion is clever, no doubt. But the test is not meant to reward cleverness. It is to find out who knows what. So that right answer should be counted wrong. Nor is this all. Multiple choice tests give the student a false idea of what knowledge is. They reduce it to bits of scattered information, whereas genuine knowledge consists of clusters of facts, their relations and their significance. And this patterning is what the mind needs to retain the whole. How then is knowledge properly tested? By carefully framed questions. The art of composing an examination is an important part of the art of teaching, and so is grading the answers from A to F or 1 to 5. True, that will not yield usable statistics. Neither do the figures compiled from multiple choice scores, because based on coaching and unrelated to genuine knowledge. Numbers can be precise without being accurate. The national scores that go up or down a few points every few months are only make-believe. Perhaps the character of the school has begun to emerge from the inventory of its essential parts. And offhand, one might think that the only remaining topic to take up is the preparation of good teachers. But there's one other matter to settle first. Who runs the school? Run must be taken in a loose sense. Teachers are not employees in a business. They are professionals, and like the doctor, lawyer, or engineer, must be largely self-directing. The school administrator, similarly, is neither a corporate executive nor the head of a government bureau. What goes with these two types of management, rigid rules, much paperwork, frequent staff meetings, and fear of initiative, will not run a school. It ruins it. Strictly speaking, those who administer the dose of schooling to the young are the teachers. To do so at their best, they must be and feel free. The person to lead them is the principal. He should choose his teachers, know them as individuals so as to guide them well, retrain them if necessary, and praise them in no routine way. The teachers, likewise, should know one another, exchange information about pupils, and discuss ideas arising from their subject. Such is the professional at work. The children should feel that the school is a going concern of which they are the reason for existence. Their sense of belonging is reinforced by regular assemblies of the whole school, where announcements of all kinds create a sort of public opinion that includes a friendly regard for the teachers and respect for the principal. Again, for the sake of atmosphere, a neighborhood school is greatly to be preferred. To the small child, its being nearby makes it an extension of home. At no time should there be, as at present, 24 million pupil commuters. From such favoring conditions, teaching and learning benefit. And that is not a guess. In the several surveys of inner city schools, going back as far as the pioneer study by the Council for Basic Education in 1970, the conclusion is that success depends on capable teachers with good morale and a principal who leads with authority. He was a teacher to begin with, not a paper pusher. The word authority makes some people nervous. What is it, actually? Authority is a claim to obedience coupled with respect. It is based on the right to direct according to accepted norms. Authority is the only alternative to force. In a school ruled by authority, you do not need armed guards roaming the halls or metal detectors at the doors. In class, the authority of the teacher maintains discipline without violent words or violent punishment. The atmosphere of a school is studious calm. The visitor should experience hospital quiet, and physical calm should be matched by mental. It is a bad habit of academic people to say that their work is exciting. When it goes well, it is absorbing. Excitement would spoil it. True, school children are human dynamos, and when their interest is aroused, it leads to wild waving of arms and cries of "teacher, teacher." But the excited boy or girl is likely to tumble out words incoherently. Fortunately, the teacher is there to bring order out of eagerness. There are, of course, proper occasions for excitement. Athletic events come first to mind, but others such as the school play, the band concert, the debate team, among other extracurricular activities, foster learning and companionship and give the school community the sense of a full life. Outdoors, the principal is responsible for decent behavior on the playground. To tolerate bullying to the point where the state legislature has to pass a statute against it is a disgrace. Who would enforce it? The sports coaches and teachers of physical education are already available to patrol the playground. As to punishment for the bullies and others, what better than extra hours of supervised work? Suspending the offender for a few days only extends his freedom to rampage and to remain ignorant. To the law-abiding, the conduct of the school teaches morals by example all day and every day. And that is why social promotion, which lets those who fail and those who do well both go on to the next grade, is immoral, unjust to the class, unjust to the teacher of that next grade. If the principal is so influential, what role is left for the superintendent? He is, or ought to be, what is called abroad a school inspector. He visits and guides. He stands toward the principals as these do to the teachers, and he leads the school board to enact his proposals. What is to be taught in each grade? Should classes be limited in size? Shall special provisions be made for gifted students? Shall high school seniors take a comprehensive examination in order to graduate? And again, what length of school year? In how many sessions? The legislature is ill-equipped to settle these matters. Different regions have different needs. For example, in foreign languages, a good superintendent will teach the board certain truths. Classes should not number over 30 young minds if the teacher is to square his or hers with theirs and know them individually. As for the school year, 8 months is enough, preferably divided in half. A longer stretch of bad schooling is not improvement. Lastly, a comprehensive examination for high school seniors is desirable, at least for the college bound, because they receive their admission notice in early spring, and if accepted, tend to stop all work. An exit examination incites to effort from the first year and sustains it through the fourth. The superintendent's other duty is to oversee the material base of the system: buildings and supplies, clerical force, and budget. He defeats himself if he does not insist on high salaries for his teachers. The money is there, usually, but spent on non-teachers. Just recently, the new head of the New York City school system cut 1,200 administrative jobs and saved $300 million. This comes to 12 jobs costing $3 million, or one job $250,000. Not, of course, for one man or woman, but for them, their assistants, and their assistants, whose contribution to schooling over the years was 30 volumes of regulations. A good school board, one willing to think about other things than the high school teams, is a product of the local population, which is to say the parents of those in school. The frequent cry, "involve the parents," sounds reasonable, but its vagueness conceals dangers. The last thing teachers need is continual demands from concerned parents. Involvement belongs in the child's home, and to make it effective, parents need guidance. Let it be given by the best teachers at meetings of the Parent-Teacher Association. There also, questions and complaints from both sides can be aired and resolved. Throughout this visit to a school, we have assumed that it is staffed by competent teachers and that the principal and the superintendent are former teachers qualified for their work. Where do these able people come from? How and by whom have they been trained? In general, teachers' colleges and departments of education in universities award the degree that leads to certification by the state. The present shortage of teachers and criticism of those that are in place are attributed to lack of interest or of native ability and of inadequate training. Hence the prior question, what makes teacher training fail? The root cause lies in the outlook that has prevailed since what has been called the transformation of the school. In 1918, an influential committee of educators diverted American schooling from its one purpose and substituted, I'm quoting, 7 cardinal principles of education: health, command of fundamental processes, worthy home membership, vocation, citizenship, worthy use of leisure, and ethical character. In practice, this has meant no longer instruct but socialize the child, cater to its emotional needs, and help reform society. After 80 years of this program, society has not appreciably improved, and the public school works less and less to remove ignorance. By and large, two motives lead men and women to school teaching. One is idealism, a desire to serve, often impelled by love of a subject and a fondness for children. The other motive is lack of any marked taste or talent. Thus, the top and the bottom of the aptitude scale preside over the classroom. When loaded with non-teaching duties and held to low salaries, good teachers resign soon or retire early, and the others stay. To make teachers out of those who are not born to the craft, it is not necessary that they should love children or burn with zeal to serve humanity. But it is necessary that they possess a certain temperament, that they master a subject, and that they acquire by practice some special habits. In action, teachers are public speakers who must know how to arouse and hold the interest of their audience and see to it that its members, young and restless, retain the message. Would-be teachers must therefore learn to speak well, must exercise their imagination so that squaring of the mind is effortless, and must be so at home in their subject that they convey it clearly, in small doses, and graced with anecdotes and asides to show its relation to other subjects and its uses in the real world. Teacher training need not make scholars, but practitioners fond of their work and still learning about it. Students say about a good teacher that he or she made the subject come alive. What they mean is that the teacher did not kill it by a dull delivery, by her own feeble interest in it, and her reduction of knowledge to a pointless string of facts. Teachers must maintain ordinary discipline. Their words are wasted when their charges distract one another by talking or passing notes or acting rowdy. At the same time, parents wonder at their offspring's hatred of school. The clue to both of these is that some class hours are so endlessly boring that an adult would rush out and hang himself. Sustained interest takes care of discipline and hatred of school in one operation. Clearly, these requisites of the skillful teacher go with a type of character: strong, definite, impressive. And impress is what is wanted in teaching. A large part of its technique can be learned only from pointers and warnings. There are properly no methods, no system of teaching. Nor are there problems with solutions to be applied. There is only difficulty, recurring, permanent. Teachers in training should therefore practice teaching early in the course, not in front of a class, but of a group of their own teachers who can give these pointers and warnings, both about the contents of the lesson and the manner of it. Teaching calls so much for quick response to what happens from moment to moment that the demand for a lesson plan to be filed 2 days ahead of time with some official who never looks at it is a cruel, pointless demand. If the plan is rigidly adhered to, it makes for bad teaching. If not, it is futile. Some teachers may well want to draw up a list of topics for the lesson, though ready to diverge from it. For the best guarantee of a good lesson remains mastery of the subject, coupled with the easy handling of unexpected difficulty. A teacher should correct mistakes without harsh words, sarcasm, or a show of temper, but will punish disturbance and in so doing must not confuse the children's sense of fairness, as one teacher did who boasted of it in print. He was about to call down an 11th grade girl who was failing in American literature and was passing notes to her neighbors when he found the notes to be a poem. His annoyance, he says, turned to delight. What she did was cause for pride and joy. So the lesson here is, pass notes and distract your neighbors, and it will make up for failing in American literature. In subjects that depend on drill, such as writing essays or book reviews, the teacher must know how to do what is almost never done. What is done is to say, I want at least 5 pages, and later the teacher corrects the errors. The poor child can hardly manage to extract 5 lines from his suddenly frozen brain. So the teacher must show the young writer how to start the flow of ideas. It's absurd to tell the boy, make an outline, when there is nothing in the mind to arrange. How to grasp the central point, make it lead to others, how to keep on track and then revise. These steps need to be illustrated more than once. As for the book review, since it has a tone and a form of its own, these must be explained from the outset. Given such requisites of good teaching, a college Department of Education should dismiss with regret candidates who, after a semester, show that their makeup as a whole is unsuited to the profession. No disgrace attaches to such judgment. People who faint at the sight of blood would make very poor surgeons. As for the devices called teaching aids, they are of dubious use. Too often, films, projections, discs, field trips are an excuse for evading work. The same is true of teamwork in doing research in the library, or, as I have seen it, with paperback books on the classroom floor. As for computers, like the now discarded teaching machines, they require from the teacher so much intelligent adaptation to the rest of the work that they must be ranked with other time-wasting devices. Teaching, drill, discussion are person-to-person encounters. Classroom technology consists of a piece of chalk and a blackboard eraser. It may be asked, what of child psychology? Should teachers learn it? Well, so far as it is science, it states only generalities. For example, Piaget tells us that the young child is self-centered and does not think in causal terms. That is, does not understand that if you do that, this will result. A parent or teacher soon learns this without reading a book. William James, the master psychologist, said long ago that the science of psychology had nothing to offer to pedagogy. The fruits of his experience as a teacher, he set down in a small book, Talks to Teachers, which is still in print and very much worth reading. What is useful for the teacher to study while in training is the history of the main educational reformers since the Roman quintillion. It shows how again and again schools turn bad, practices get ossified, and the proposed remedies repeat. Use imagination, no mindless memorizing, emphasize things, not words, relate subjects to each other and to life. Today, one must add, no other goal than to remove ignorance, no preposterism such as Dick and Jane and the new math, no attempt at reforming society. These are broad negatives. There is a particular one. Trainers and teachers must not think and talk in woolly words. Creative learning, values clarification, the right to read whole language, language arts, teach for America, nor does changing familiar words bring improvement. Facilitator or for teacher, module for class period, and the strange process known as lesson study create only mental fog. It was an evil day, somewhere around the 1880s, when the phrase public instruction was replaced by public education. The change let in the 7 devils of verbal inflation. Education cannot be given. It is something made by oneself out of one's experience. To bring out in each candidate teacher the talents surveyed here obviously requires a teachers' college faculty itself made up of teachers. Some will be theorists beside, but all must be able to say, "Watch how I do it." This is the rule in all professional schools, medicine, law, business, or engineering. Teaching is a hands-on activity. A quick point or two in conclusion. We are told that disappointed parents who've taken on the task of homeschooling turn out a good many boys and girls who are much better prepared for college than the best high school graduates. This is to the credit of parental care and intelligence, but it does not mean that private tutoring is inherently better than public schooling. It is true that whoever has charge of only 1 or 2 children can do a more precise squaring of the mind than is possible with 20 or 30, and thus teach more in the same span of time. But the larger group as such teaches lessons that the tutor never can. Lessons in social behavior and self-control. Being in class fosters emulation and a knowledge of human character, including one's own. To say nothing of the chance of lifelong friendships and the benefit of mingling with equals of different ethnic and economic backgrounds. All this, coupled with the influence year in and year out of several dozen adults who are not parents, creates what cannot be done in other ways, young citizens. In this country right now, the people are at one in wanting good schools. Strictly speaking, there is no such thing, any more than there is good government. Good in the sense that everything works right as in a machine. No school or government can faultlessly fulfill its promise to its constituents, but some perform far better than others. Why is complete goodness beyond reach? In a school, the reason is that its functioning is in the hands of a large number of grown-ups and of children who are, all of them, less than perfect. Mistaken decisions, accidental neglect, fatigue, laziness, and other failings mar performance, in spite of earnest effort and sensible arrangements. It is therefore wise for teachers, parents, and administrators, while making firm demands, to entertain reasonable expectations, to refrain from routine pieties, from promises and slogans of the kind that we hear from advertisers and candidates for office. School people and parents should seek satisfaction in each day's conscientious work, rather than chase after empty abstractions such as excellence and innovation. The day's work is manageable, and its results are cumulative. In schoolwork, let me repeat, there are no organic problems to solve, no breakthrough to look for that will revolutionize teaching and learning. There is only a steady, unchanging set of difficulties to meet head-on and overcome so as to remove ignorance. When that is done with fair success, then teacher and taught deserve reward and respect. The school is a school. Yes, I wish it would. Yes, by all means.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barzun. He has graciously agreed to answer questions. We have a couple of mics down here. If you would like to come forward, I will try and field them for him and repeat them, and he will give you the candid, insightful, and learned answer you would expect. Yes, ma'am.
I attended St. John's College, where great books of Western civilization are discussed by jejune pedants, but seminars greatly improve among alumni who have lived and learned. My question concerns computers, which do provide autodidactic capabilities, which are particularly good for language and math, from elementary repetition to advanced 3D geometries. Surely good computer programs and equipment could fit into your ideal school system.
I'm not sure I can redact that simply. Let me first ask, which St. John's? Annapolis? Or, oh, both. The question was whether or not, I think, was whether or not computers can do some of the repetitive things that are important in memorization and free the teacher and student in another way. Is that fair?
I doubt it very much. A machine induces the mechanical, whereas in drill done under teacher's presence, takes various forms of response, correction, questioning, stumbling, and recovery. To my mind, there is absolutely no substitute made of wires and keys for the presence of the teacher in the class talking to his or her students. And we had the teaching machines, and they were supposed to do just what has been described here, but they're now gathering dust in the basements of all the schools of the country.
Sir.
I was fortunate enough to go to public school the last 2 years of my high school curriculum. And I started off in a private school, and predominantly most of my life went to private school. So in my opinion there, I really learned a lot. Good study habits, study techniques, ways to retain a lot of information. And then it seems as though the last 2 years of high school was a pretty predominantly inner city high school, about 60% Hispanic, 20% African American, and 10% other and white included. And so I get to public high school, and it seems as though work is not influenced as much, and the teaching isn't exactly up to the same standard as it was at the private schools. And you spoke a lot of how a lot of emphasis should be placed on a lot on the teachers. But doesn't a lot of that come from the families when it starts off? Because I was lucky enough, like I said, from my parents helping me to study, keeping me in line. And you spoke of how school boards are a product of local populations, and school boards are a product of a local population.
What is the question?
I'm just going to ask how much emphasis should be placed on the families in comparison to the teachers?
I think the question, if I can try and paraphrase it, is schools are presented with a given, which is a young person who comes from a family, and how much can they do to undo what the family has done or not done? That is, what's the relationship between the teacher and the family?
Thank you.
The relation is, of course, variable, and excuse me, I'm presupposing that the Parent-Teacher Association is active and well managed, so that the parents learn along with their children what should and could be done at home. Now, that will never be perfect, but it will be better than either the relation of hostility, which I understand occurs today quite frequently, or of total help by the parent, who then ought to get the high school degree and not the child.
Thank you. Sir.
Don Barzun, bienvenido a Texas. I have thoroughly enjoyed your thoughts, and I appreciate Trinity offering this forum. And I'm going to certainly pass on my recommendations to a 100-acre plot of land in Memphis known as Rhodes College. Now, I'm going to use some strong words that are being used by fellow teachers. I teach elementary school. I'm a bilingual teacher here in San Antonio. Pettiness, vindictiveness, which way is the wind blowing, knee-jerk, and something that's deep in my roots here in Texas, although I've been forgiven for leaving the motherland here, but I've returned. Riding your horses hard and put them away wet, you're going to find yourself on foot. We teachers, I'll use my campus, unnamed, have had 8 administrators in 7 years on our particular campus. It's not surprising that every time we get a new administrator, they come in and to justify their position, they have to do something different that was done before. I'm roaming the halls now, and I miss people that I used to teach with me. I miss them sorely, but I don't fault them for leaving the industry. But we're reaching diminishing returns now in terms of the toss and quality. And you spoke to a lot of that tonight, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think that was probably less a question than a statement, but it probably had to go with about how governance relates to teaching, that is, governance within the schools.
I thought I'd laid out the main lines of the relation between superintendent, principal, and teachers. The atmosphere of freedom should predominate over rules, although there should be certain rules adhered to, but no excess, no trying to regulate every 5 minutes or even every day or week of the year. Schooling is a cooperative operation between people of unequal age, and it must work itself out within the wide boundaries of the subject matter, the time, the degree of attention that can be obtained. There is no system that can be applied like a waffle iron on batter.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts about why the U.S. schooling system has so eagerly embraced the cardinal principles and their consequent great transformation.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? One more time?
Yes, I was wondering if you could tell me if you had any thoughts about why the U.S. schooling system has so eagerly embraced the cardinal principles and their consequent great transformation upon the schools.
Which cardinal principles are we talking about here?
The 7 cardinal principles that he referred to in his talk.
Why have the schools so eagerly embraced the 7 cardinal principles?
That would be reading the minds of people long gone. To me, those cardinal principles seem so remote from the subject of schooling, and their title was Committee on the Reorganization of American Schools. That I can't follow them at all. The one thing in the 7 that's remotely connected with work of the mind, is command of fundamental processes. And the wording is itself so bad that it could refer to basal metabolism in the human body. I am at a loss to answer the very intelligent question.
Yes, sir.
You said that good schools should hand down the treasury of knowledge, or it'll result in barbarism in 30 years. How well are we doing at handing down that treasury of knowledge, or are we headed towards barbarism?
How well we're doing it, I'm afraid my answer would open me to a charge of slander. No, seriously, we're not doing it well at all, which is why we're all concerned about schools, and have been so for the last 30 years. You would be amazed, perhaps, if you went over a list of the enactments, the schemes, the proposals, the associations, the leagues, the exploratory studies that have been going on since about 1950, and that have led to absolutely no reform whatsoever, no improvement that anybody is satisfied with.
Ask a question. I've been reading your book, Dr. Barzun. In the book, you show a great enthusiasm for the Jesuit approach to education. You feel that the Jesuit education is the best education in the history of the world. Should we return to it? Should we what?
Should we return to Jesuit education?
No, of course not. That would be out of the question. The point I made in my book about Jesuit education is twofold. One, they developed a system of teacher training which is unexampled anywhere. They took a great many candidates, they worked with them for years, eliminating them year after year through an 8 or 10 year course until they had a core of teachers who knew what they were talking about, knew how to do it, who introduced, incidentally, in the 16th century, the idea that the teacher should be gentle and not a taskmaster with a ruler ready to hit a child who gave the wrong answer. They understood both teacher training and how the teacher should teach. Now, of course, they did it in the hope that they would recover large parts of Europe from the Protestant Reformation. But they succeeded a little bit. But in the end, what happened was that all the thinkers of the 17th and 18th centuries, whom we regard as great leaders of opinion, were educated by the Jesuits and turned against their doctrine. So that's another reason why one should not try to reform society through the school or do any other kind of indoctrination, because it may very well turn against you, and meantime, it's a waste of effort.
Sir, after listening to you talk about what is and is not teachable, and also what constitutes proper teacher education, or training, as you would say, it made me wonder, is teaching teachable?
Certainly, because, as I said, I think there are very few born teachers, and there have been many, many, many good teachers. There are many now in our public schools. They're often stymied by all sorts of bureaucratic rules. They're discouraged, they leave, but there they are, or were, good teachers. So they must have received in some lucky place the right kind of teacher training. When I said that certain subjects are unteachable in the classroom, I meant in the schools that we have, from kindergarten to the 12th grade. It certainly is possible, for example, to teach social studies to a group of experienced adults who already know a great deal about law and government, about sociology and anthropology. One can pull together the knowledge that they already have and make them into some other kind of person, such as a city planner or something like that. So subjects of that composite kind themselves can be taught, but not in school, not in the public school, where everything is of a kind, has no basis in previous learning and experience in those who study it.
I have a question about the practical implications or the practical ways that we can accomplish some of the goals that you said today. So, for example, I wholeheartedly agree that teachers should be receiving pay equal to the task, or that schools should support learning, and that, for example, class sizes should be smaller so that teachers can teach students in a more personal environment. How do we go about doing those things? Schools and education are one of the only, if not the only, public institution that is run by people who have no background in education. You would not trust the public health to someone who was not trained in medicine, but laws are passed by people who have no background in education. So how do we go about changing things for public education if teachers really have very little control over what rules and regulations are passed for their students and for themselves?
At the risk of doing an injustice to the question, let me try and, how do we get there from here? Wonderful ideas about what the schools ought to be, but there are certain political realities that include, at least from the questioner's point of view, restrictions on what teachers can do based upon essentially non-educators being in charge of education. Is that a fair?
Yes.
I never intended to propose yet another scheme for reforming our schools. All I wanted to describe was the school that has been in being since ancient Greece, with differences in subject matter and in the organization of the teachers. I mean, their relation to one another and to their superiors. The school has been the same down to about 1920. Following the 1918 report, there was this overlap of a few years, and then the 1918 report prevailed. But I'm willing to hazard a guess, a possible answer to this very relevant question, and that is that through teacher training of a different kind from that which we have had, there would be no conflict with the trade unions, with the teachers' unions, no conflict with the bureaucracy. It would work indirectly from the top down. And we would get teachers into schools who would be prepared to do the work of the school to remove ignorance. And they would, if there were insufficient numbers, probably resist irrelevant regulations, support a principle and get rid of another. I'm not capable of drawing the map of the military operations that would bring about a real reform. But it seems to me that that is about the only opening in the whole scholastic situation, the teacher training at the top.
One last question.
As a practical matter, what would you recommend to alleviate the present shortage of teachers? Salary increases, more support from administrators, more support from parents, more freedom in the classroom, better teacher training?
How do we make the teaching profession more attractive so more people go into it?
Salary to begin with, because money earns respect automatically, and teachers need respect to be free and not apprehensive. And if salaries are good in schoolwork, they won't go to other work. And perhaps, again, through numbers of similarly minded teachers who feel independent because of their salary, change from within may take place.
Thank you, Dr. Barzun.
I've been thinking very hard about this, because George Bush's education